Lieutenant Commander Cassandra Way's boots echoed through the empty corridors of Nexus 7, each step a reminder that she was now completely alone. The monitoring station, usually bustling with the activity of 47 crew members, had fallen silent 6 hours ago. Only the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional ping of deep space sensors broke the deathly quiet. She paused at the observation deck, her dark eyes scanning the vast starfield before her. Something was wrong with the stars. The patterns had changed, subtle distortions rippling through space itself as if reality was being gently pulled apart at the seams. Her hand instinctively touched the neural implant at the base of her skull. The quantum processor that connected her directly to the station's systems was warning her of anomalies it couldn't quite define. "Station, full spectrum analysis of Sector 7 Alpha," she commanded, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. The holographic display materialized before her, showing readings that defied everything she knew about physics. Energy signatures unlike anything recorded in human history were bleeding through what appeared to be tears in space-time itself. A message flashed across her neural link. Restricted files accessed. Security Protocol Omega. Ancient data, preserved for centuries by the station's quantum cores, began flooding her consciousness. The Virith, a race of pure energy beings that had nearly wiped out all organic life in the galaxy a million years ago. The Etherians, the most advanced civilization known to exist, had barely managed to force them into hibernation, sacrificing their entire species in the process. And now they were awakening. The realization hit her just as the station's proximity alerts screamed to life. A massive energy surge erupted from the nearest spatial anomaly, and through it came something that her human mind struggled to comprehend. Beings of pure light and purpose, their very existence an affront to the laws of physics as humanity understood them. Cassandra ran, her enhanced reflexes carrying her through the station's winding corridors toward the quantum communications array. Behind her, she could hear the impossible, the sound of reality being unmade, as the Virith began systematically converting all matter in their path to pure energy. She reached the communications center, her fingers flying over the controls as she initiated an emergency broadcast on all frequencies. The neural implant streamed data directly from her mind to the quantum transmitters, carrying not just her message but everything she had learned about the Virith. "This is Lieutenant Commander Cassandra Way of Monitoring Station Nexus 7. To any receiving this transmission, they have returned. The Virith are awake, and they hunger. Everything the Etherians warned us about was true. I'm transmitting all data we have, including the coordinates of their emergence point. God help us all." But as she prepared to send the message, her neural link revealed one more piece of information that the ancient Etherians had left behind. A choice. A terrible, impossible choice. The quantum processor contained the codes to activate a dormant network of reality-altering devices the Etherians had scattered throughout the galaxy. If activated, they could seal the spatial tiers the Virith were using to enter our dimension. But the energy required would cause a chain reaction, destroying every star system within 1,000 light-years, including several populated human colonies. Millions would die, but billions more might be saved. Through the observation windows, Cassandra watched as the first wave of Virith approached the station. They were beautiful in their alienness, geometric patterns of living light that shifted and flowed like liquid mathematics. She could feel their consciousness brush against her mind, vast and cold and utterly incomprehensible. Her hand hovered over the quantum transmitter, time seeming to slow as she made her choice. In that moment, she understood why the Etherians had left this burden to whoever discovered it. It wasn't just about the technical capability to activate the network. It was about finding a species willing to bear the moral weight of such a decision. The Virith were less than a minute from breaching the station's outer hull. Soon, they would access its databanks and learn about every human world, every colony, every settlement. The entire species would be mapped out for systematic harvesting. Cassandra Way took a deep breath, sent her warning message, and made her choice. The price of tomorrow would be paid in today's blood. The quantum network hummed to life, and the stars began to scream. In the centuries that followed, humanity would debate her decision. Some would call her a monster, others a savior. But all agreed on one thing. When the moment came to stand against the darkness between the stars, she had not flinched. The Virith would return again, but humanity would be ready. And in the depths of space, on countless worlds throughout the galaxy, others would remember the sacrifice of Nexus 7 and its last guardian, who chose to bear the burden of an impossible choice so that others might live to face the dawn. Dr. Marcus Rivera stared at the holographic display until his eyes burned. Watching the double helix of human DNA dance alongside strange, crystalline structures that defied conventional biology. 3 weeks had passed since the Nexus 7 incident, and the mathematical patterns hidden within the ancient Etherian artifacts were finally beginning to make sense. They weren't just warnings, they were instructions encoded into the very fabric of life itself. "Play it again, Arya," he commanded the lab's AI system. The three-dimensional projection rewound, showing the moment of transformation when human genetic material was exposed to the recovered Etherian crystal. The DNA didn't just change, it awakened, as if remembering something long forgotten. The laboratory deep beneath the Terran Defense Initiative's lunar research facility hummed with energy as banks of quantum computers processed petabytes of data. Marcus hadn't left the facility in days, not since he discovered the first correlation between human genetic markers and the Etherian crystalline technology. Dr. Rivera, Arya's calm voice interrupted his thoughts. "Director Kinzo is requesting your presence in the emergency briefing room." Marcus ran his fingers through his graying hair, barely registering the tremors in his hands from too much caffeine and too little sleep. "Tell her I'm in the middle of a crucial sequence analysis. She says it's about the Virith. They've been spotted in the Proxima Centauri system." The words hit him like a physical blow. Proxima Centauri was just 2 light-years from Earth. The enemy that had destroyed Nexus 7 was practically on their doorstep. In the briefing room, Director Yuki Kinzo stood before a wall of holographic displays showing real-time updates from across human space. Her usually immaculate uniform was wrinkled, suggesting she'd been sleeping in her office again. "Marcus," she nodded as he entered, "please tell me you have something." He projected his findings onto the main screen. "The Etherians didn't just leave us warnings about the Virith. They left us a key." The display showed the intricate dance of molecules he'd been studying. They engineered a dormant sequence into the human genome, something that's been waiting to be activated for millions of years. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Chun, attending via hologram from the Mars Defense Command, was the first to speak. "Are you suggesting the Etherians modified our ancestors? That they chose us?" "Not exactly," Marcus explained, bringing up a new series of projections. "They seeded countless worlds with this potential, but something about Earth's conditions, our gravity, our radiation levels, our evolutionary pressures, caused the sequence to develop differently in humans. We're the only species where it fully integrated into our genetic structure." Director Kinzo's eyes narrowed. "What exactly does this sequence do, Doctor?" Marcus took a deep breath. "It allows human consciousness to interface directly with Etherian technology at a quantum level. The neural implants we've been using for the past century? They're just scratching the surface. The Etherians left behind weapons, ships, entire defense systems that can only be activated by beings with this specific genetic marker. And we're it. How long to weaponize this discovery?" Admiral Chen demanded. "That's the problem," Marcus said, his voice heavy. "The process of awakening these dormant sequences. It's fatal to the subject. We've tried it on isolated tissue samples, but a full human transformation would..." "Would what, Doctor?" "It would burn them out from the inside. Their consciousness would merge with the Etherian systems, but their physical form would be destroyed in the process. They'd become something else. Something between organic and energy-based life." The silence that followed was deafening. Director Kinzo finally broke it. "How many subjects would we need?" Marcus felt sick. "Director, we can't just..." "The Virith are converting entire planets into energy, Doctor. Billions will die if we don't find a way to stop them." "How many?" 3. he whispered. The Etherian defense network requires 3 consciousness nodes to activate fully, but they'd have to be volunteers. The transformation, the pain would be unbearable if the subject wasn't willing. Admiral Chin's hologram flickered. We already have volunteers. After Nexus 7, half the fleet offered to sacrifice themselves if it meant stopping another attack. Marcus thought of the test subjects, the tissue samples that had screamed at a molecular level as they transformed. He thought of Lieutenant Commander Wei, alone on her station, making an impossible choice to save others. There's something else you need to know, he said quietly. The transformation, it's not just physical. The consciousness persists, trapped between dimensions, aware for potentially thousands of years. We'd be asking these volunteers to endure an eternity of existence as living weapons. Director Kinzo walked to the window, staring out at the lunar surface. Send out the call, Admiral. We need 3 volunteers with the highest neural compatibility scores. And Doctor, she turned back to face him. Find a way to make it quick. We owe them that much at least. Marcus nodded, already knowing he would spend every remaining moment trying to minimize the suffering of whoever stepped forward. But as he left the briefing room, his neural implant pinged with a notification. The quantum computers had finished their latest analysis of the Etherian data. There was more. Something hidden deeper in the code. Something about the true nature of the Virith and why the Etherians had chosen humanity as their successors. But before he could process the information, the facility's alerts screamed to life. The Virith had arrived in the Sol system. Time had run out. As Marcus raced back to his lab, the weight of 1,000,000 years of planning pressed down upon him. The Etherians had given humanity the keys to survival, but at what cost? And in the end, would it be enough to stop an enemy that had already destroyed civilizations far more advanced than their own? The answer, he feared, would be written in sacrifice and stardust. First Contact Specialist Zara Patel stood in the airlock of the diplomatic vessel Olive Branch, watching as the massive ship of the Nomad Collective emerged from Fold space. It defied conventional design, a living metropolis of interconnected vessels, each belonging to a different species that had survived previous Virith purges. The ship's bioorganic hull pulsed with patterns of bioluminescence, a language unto itself. They're ready to receive you. Lieutenant Reese's voice crackled through her calm. Remember, we're tracking your vitals through the diplomatic suit. First sign of trouble. You'll come charging in and potentially spark an interspecies incident, Zara finished with a wry smile. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The airlock cycled, and Zara stepped into a translucent tube that extended between the ships. Below her feet, the stars wheeled slowly, a reminder of just how far from Earth she now was. The Nomads had agreed to this meeting only after the fall of 3 more human colonies to the Virith. Their message had been clear. They would share their knowledge of survival, but only with one who came alone and unarmed. The receiving chamber aboard the Nomad vessel took her breath away. Dozens of species gathered in a vast spherical space, some floating in special atmosphere bubbles, others moving on multiple legs or no legs at all. In the center stood the 3 speakers, representatives chosen by the collective to communicate with outsiders. Welcome, child of Earth. The first speaker, a crystalline being named NX-Thal, projected directly into her mind. We have watched your species face its trial by fire. The second speaker, Yrith, a creature of living vapor, swirled in patterns that her neural translator struggled to decode. You fight well, but fighting is not enough. We are the remnants, the survivors who learned that there are worse fates than running. The third speaker, an ancient being named Onva, whose physical form seemed to shift between states of matter, moved forward. Show us why we should share our secrets of survival with one so young, so eager to stand and die rather than bend and live. Zara took a deep breath, tasting the filtered air of her suit. I bring more than just humanity's plea for help. I bring proof that we were chosen by the Etherians. A ripple of movement passed through the gathered species. The name of the ancient civilization clearly held meaning here. She projected Dr. Rivera's findings about the human genome and the Etherian protocols. We carry their legacy, their final weapon against the Virith. But we need time to implement it, and our worlds are falling one by one. The Etherians' choice proves nothing, Inexthal responded. They chose poorly before. The Virith were once their chosen too, uplifted from energy beings to supposed guardians of organic life. Look how well that ended. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. The Virith were created by the Etherians? Created, uplifted, and given power beyond imagination. Yrith's vapor form pulsed with old grief. They were meant to be shepherds of life, able to transcend physical form to protect and nurture organic species. Instead, they became convinced that all organic life was inefficient, wasteful. They began their great conversion, turning living worlds into pure energy, believing they were perfecting the universe. This is why we run, Omva added. This is why we survive. The Virith cannot be reasoned with. They believe they are saving us from our own imperfect existence. But Zara saw something else in the data streaming through her neural link, patterns she recognized from her years of studying xenopsychology. You're wrong, she said quietly. About why they convert organic life to energy. I don't think it's about perfection at all. I think it's about fear. The chamber fell silent. Even the background hum of the ship's living systems seemed to dim. Explain, Inexthal demanded. Look at the pattern of their attacks, the worlds they target first. They're methodical, yes, but they prioritize species on the verge of major technological breakthroughs. They're not converting us because they think we're imperfect. They're doing it because they're afraid we'll become like them. Afraid we'll gain the power to threaten their existence. She brought up a holographic display of the Virith attack patterns. They're not shepherds who lost their way. They're guard dogs who outlived their masters and are now killing anything that might replace them. The three speakers conferred in frequencies beyond human perception. Around the chamber, the gathered species buzzed with conversation, some agreeing, others arguing against her interpretation. Finally, Omva spoke. If what you say is true, if you truly carry the Etherians' final legacy, then activating it will only provoke them further. They will throw everything they have at Earth. Yes, Zara agreed. That's why we need your help. Not to fight, but to save as many as we can. While we activate the Etherian protocols, we need your expertise in evacuation, in hiding, in surviving. Help us save those we can, so that if we fail, humanity doesn't end in a single strike. The three speakers conferred again, this time for nearly an hour. Zara stood perfectly still, knowing that millions of lives hung on their decision. We will help, Inexthal finally announced. Not because of the Etherian's choice, but because you understood what we did not. Knowledge alone is not enough. Understanding is needed. The collective will teach you our ways of survival, Yrith added. But know this. If your weapon fails, if the Virith triumph, you must join us in the void between stars. For that is the price of our help. Agreed, Zara said without hesitation. But first, I need to know everything you know about the Virith. Their weaknesses, their psychological patterns, The ship's emergency beacon suddenly flared to life. On every display, spatial distortions were appearing. The Virith had found them. It seems, Omva observed with grim humor. Your first lesson in survival begins now. As the Nomad vessel prepared for emergency fold space jump, Zara sent a desperate transmission to Earth. The Virith weren't just coming to destroy them. They were coming to prevent their own extinction. And that made them more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Captain James Okafor stood at the helm of the Starcaller, watching as the experimental ship's quantum drives tore holes in reality itself. The vessel was humanity's greatest achievement, a hybrid of human innovation and reverse-engineered Etherian technology. Its hull gleamed with circuits that looked more like arteries, pulsing with energy that defied conventional physics. "Status report," he commanded, his deep voice steady despite the knowledge that they were attempting something never before achieved in human space flight. His XO, Commander Diane Zhang, consulted her neural readouts. Quantum matrix holding at 89%. We're maintaining cohesion through the fold, but the biological components are showing strain. Dr. Rivera's modifications to the ship's DNA are the only thing keeping us together. The Starcaller wasn't just a ship, it was alive in its own way. Built using the same principles that Dr. Rivera had discovered in human DNA, it existed partially in normal space and partially in the quantum realm that the Virith called home. It was humanity's only hope of reaching their scattered forces before it was too late. Message from the Atlas colony, Lieutenant Park announced from communications. They're under attack. 3 Virith world ships detected in their system. James clenched his jaw. Atlas was home to 2 million colonists. How long to intercept? Even with the quantum drive, we're looking at 17 minutes, Diane replied. Captain, they might not have that long. The bridge crew watched their commander, knowing the weight of the choice before him. The Starcaller carried the codes and technology needed to coordinate humanity's last stand. If they were destroyed trying to save one colony, plot the intercept, James ordered. And give me a channel to Atlas Defense Command. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the face of Atlas's defense coordinator, Colonel Regina Murphy. Her features were strained, blood trickling from her nose, a sign of neural implant overload. Captain Okafor, she managed a grim smile. The cavalry arrives at last. Hold on, Colonel. We're 17 minutes out. We'll be Adams in 12. She coughed, wiping blood from her lip. But listen, we've discovered something. The Virith, they're not just converting matter to energy. They're preserving us, storing our consciousness somehow, like a twisted form of digital immortality. James felt his blood run cold. How did you? We managed to partially decrypt their communications. They see themselves as saviors, Captain. They think they're giving us a gift, saving us from the limitations of physical form. Her image flickered as another blast rocked the colony. But that's not the important part. We found out why they're so afraid of the Ethereum protocols being activated. The transmission crackled with interference. Colonel, stay with me. The protocols, they don't just fight the Virith. They can reverse the conversion process. All those civilizations they've consumed over the millennia, they could be restored. That's why the transmission cut out as another blast hit. Get her back, James ordered. Multiple quantum signatures detected, Diane shouted. The Virith are using the colony's mass to create a conversion sphere. They're starting the harvesting process early. James watched in horror as space itself seemed to fold around Atlas colony. The Virith weren't just destroying it. They were turning it into a massive energy collection device. And now he understood why. They weren't just afraid of being stopped. They were afraid of being forced to give back everything they'd stolen. New contact. Lieutenant Park's voice was tight with tension. Quantum distortion off the port bow. Sir, it's the Nomad Collective. The massive bioorganic ship of the Collective emerged from fold space, its living hull glowing with patterns of warning and preparation. A transmission came through, and James recognized the crystalline form of Speaker in Exthal. We received your ambassador's warning. The aliens' thoughts projected directly into their minds. The Collective has voted. We will no longer run. Not when there's a chance to restore what was lost. James nodded grimly. We need to coordinate our forces. The Starcaller carries. Captain, Diane interrupted. Quantum surge from the colony. They're doing something with their planetary defense grid. On the main screen, they watched as Atlas's orbital platforms began to move, forming a precise geometric pattern. Colonel Murphy's bloodied face appeared one final time. Remember, she said, her voice eerily calm. Sometimes the best defense is to show them what they're really afraid of. The transmission cut out as Atlas's defense grid overloaded all at once, creating a cascading quantum reaction that tore open a hole in space-time itself. The Virith world ships recoiled, their energy forms disrupted by the unexpected attack. In that moment of chaos, James saw their opportunity. All hands, battle stations, he commanded. Commander Zhang, prep the quantum drive for emergency jump. Lieutenant Park, transmit the coordination codes to every human settlement and collective ship in range. Colonel Murphy just bought us our chance, and we're not going to waste it. As the Starcaller's hybrid systems hummed to life, James thought about everything that had led to this moment. Lieutenant Commander Way's sacrifice at Nexus 7, Dr. Rivera's discovery of humanity's hidden legacy, Zara Patel's alliance with the Nomads, and now Colonel Murphy's final act of defiance. They had all played their parts in revealing the truth. The Virith weren't invincible. They were afraid. And now humanity would show them exactly why their fear was justified. Sir, Diane's voice was quiet. What Colonel Murphy did, she proved they could be hurt. But the cost? The cost is always high, James replied, watching as ships began appearing around them. Human vessels, nomad bioships, all responding to the call. But now we know something else. Everyone the Virith have taken? They're not dead. Not really. And we're going to get them back. The Starcaller's quantum drive spun up, its hybrid consciousness merging with James's neural implant, as they prepared to make the jump that would begin humanity's real war against the Virith. Not just for survival, but for redemption. For the first time since the crisis began, Captain James Okafor allowed himself to feel something dangerous: hope. Lieutenant Nova Rodriguez stood before the 3 transformation chambers in the heart of the Starcaller, each capsule humming with etherian energy that made her neural implant buzz like static. The ship's living walls pulsed with an anxious rhythm, as if aware of what was about to happen. Final diagnostics complete. Dr. Rivera's hologram reported from the lunar facility. His aged face showed the strain of months working to perfect this moment. The neural interfaces are as stable as we can make them. But Nova, he hesitated, there's still no way to make this painless. Pain is temporary, Nova replied, touching the medallion at her throat, a gift from her grandmother, one of the 2 million souls taken when Atlas Colony fell. What matters is that it works. She looked at her 2 companions, chosen from thousands of volunteers based on their unprecedented neural compatibility scores. Commander Talos Pham, the quantum physicist who had helped decode the Etherian crystals, stood ready at the first chamber. Besides him, Major Jun Hayashi, whose experimental consciousness transfer research had proven crucial to understanding the transformation process, was already stepping into the second capsule. They all knew the cost. Their bodies would burn away, their consciousness transformed into living quantum energy capable of interfacing with the ancient Etherian defense network. They would exist forever as something between organic and energy beings. Exactly what the Virith feared humanity would become. Incoming transmission from Captain Okafor, the ship's AI announced. James's weathered face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the combined fleet of human and nomad vessels stretched into the distance. Lieutenant, the Virith have begun their final approach. Their entire collective is here, over 3,000 world ships. They know what we're attempting. Then we better not keep them waiting. Nova managed to smile. How's our backup plan? Zara's done it. The Nomad Collective has evacuated everyone they could from the threatened systems. If we fail, he left the rest and said, if they failed, at least some of humanity would survive among the stars. We won't fail, Nova said with a conviction she didn't entirely feel. The Virith thought they could make us run like everyone else. They thought fear would drive us into the dark between stars. But they forgot something important. What's that, Lieutenant? Humans don't just adapt to survive. We adapt to win. The ship's alerts blared as the first wave of Virith vessels began their attack. The combined fleet moved to intercept, buying time for what had to be done. Nova stepped into her chamber, the neural interface connecting with her implant. Dr. Rivera's voice came through one final time. Remember, once the transformation begins, you'll have exactly 7 minutes to synchronize with the network before the process becomes irreversible. If you haven't achieved harmony by then, we burn out and take the network with us, Nova finished. We know the risks, Doctor. Thank you for everything. The chambers hummed to life. Nova felt the energy begin to course through her body, and the pain was beyond anything human language could describe. But as her physical form began to break down, something else happened. Her consciousness expanded, touching minds and memories not her own. She saw through Talos' eyes as he solved the final equations that made this possible. Through June's mind as she discovered how to preserve consciousness through quantum translation. She felt the determination of Lieutenant Commander Wei at Nexus 7, the brilliant insights of Dr. Rivera, the diplomatic grace of Zara Patel, the steady leadership of Captain Okafor. And then she saw them, the Virith, in their true form. Not conquerors, but frightened children who had been given power they weren't ready for. Who had hidden their fear behind a mask of superiority for so long they'd forgotten what they really were. We see you. Nova projected her thoughts into the quantum realm where the Virith existed. We understand you. And we forgive you. The response was immediate and violent. The Virith collective recoiled, their energy forms fluctuating with something that might have been panic. They launched everything they had at the Star Caller, determined to stop the transformation. But it was too late. Nova felt her consciousness merge with Talos and June, their three minds becoming something new, something that existed in perfect quantum harmony with the Etherian network. Around them, ancient machines buried in planets, hidden in stars, and drifting in the void between galaxies began to wake. You fear we will become like you, Nova communicated to the Virith. But we already are. The difference is, we remember what it means to be human. The network activated. Across the galaxy, quantum gates opened, releasing the stored consciousness of countless civilizations the Virith had preserved. But instead of simply reversing the conversion process, Nova and her companions did something else, something the Etherians had designed but never dared to attempt. They offered choice. To every being, organic and energy alike, they offered the freedom to choose their form of existence. To the Virith, they offered the chance to remember their original purpose. To the converted civilizations, they offered either restoration or a new form of existence as beings of quantum energy. This is evolution, Nova broadcast across the quantum realm. Not through force, not through fear, but through choice, through understanding, through hope. The battle above Earth stopped as the choice rippled through space. Some Virith refused, clinging to their fear and rage until their energy forms dissipated into harmless radiation. Others accepted, their consciousness transforming into something new, something that bridged the gap between organic and energy life. And in the heart of the Star Caller, three humans who had dared to become something more felt the price of tomorrow being paid, not in blood or fear or loss, but in transformation, in hope, in change. Decades later, children on 1,000 worlds would learn of that day. They would learn of the sacrifices made, the choices offered, the bridges built between forms of life that had once seemed incompatible. They would learn that humanity's greatest strength was not in its ability to fight, but in its capacity to understand, to forgive, and to grow. And in the quantum realm between spaces, three guardians would watch over it all, remembering what it meant to be human while being something far more. For they had paid tomorrow's price, and found it worth every moment of pain, every ounce of sacrifice, every step of the journey that had brought them to that final, transformative dawn.